Wilds of Eldraine is just around the corner, and today we're going through my top 10 picks for cards to play in Standard. Now I'm going to be ranking them from 10 to 1 at what I think are going to be great playable cards in the Standard format, because I do think Standard needs a little bit of a shake-up, and there are some cards which hopefully allow us to do that. So let's get into number 10. Okay, and at number 10 we have the Gumdrop Poisoner. Now I didn't actually look at this in my previews. I think it came like one of the last few cards that got shown, and when I saw it I thought actually this is actually a pretty decent card. So we have a 3-drop, it's a venture creature, has an adventure side for 1 black instant, create a food token, so that is quite relevant. And the reason why we have the bargain mechanic, which allows us to sacrifice an artifact, a token or a creature to gain an additional effect, plus also gain a little bit of extra life, isn't too bad either. And then we have basically a 3/2 for 3 with lifelink, so pretty okay-ish stats. Lifelink is quite nice, of course, especially in best of 1 against all those mono red aggro decks. But when it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature gets -X until the end of turn, where X is the amount of life that I gained this turn, that you gained this turn, right? That is actually pretty good. So we've already seen, let's say you had like Shieldred out, right? You wouldn't play this maybe on turn 3 unless you have some way of getting life, but let's say you have Shieldred out. You gain 2 life, right? You draw your card for the turn, you gain 2. You play this, -2/-2. Not bad, not like the most crazy thing going, but you know, still pretty decent. Another example is if you sacrifice this food token, right? I know it costs 2 mana, so now we're looking at 5 mana. But even if you pay 5 mana, you know, you gain 3 life, you give a creature -3/-3, and you're left with a 3/2 life linker. That's not too bad. And again, on the other end, let's say you just play this as a 3-drop. Okay, you just play this on turn 3. On turn 4, you swing in, and let's say your opponent doesn't block. They're like, you know what, I'm not going to block. You gain 3 life, play another one. Okay, or let's say you make a food token, then you play another one. This second one that comes down is going to give a creature -3/-3. So it has some uses, and I quite like that. And the fact is that you get to make a food token is relevant. So there's so much bargaining stuff in this set. And we have a card later on which works very well with this, which we'll get to. Coming number 9, we have the Tortoise, the Turtle. I actually like this card. That's why I put it on the top 10 list. There is a 4-mana 3/3, you know, not the best stat, especially in green. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to mill 3 cards, then you get to return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it kind of is ramp in some ways, you know, which is actually pretty nice. But it's the other stuff which I really like, and that is activate abilities of lands you control cost 1 less, and we'll get to the creature lands later on this list, because they are very good. And land creatures you control get +1/+1. So let's say we have one of the creature lands that costs 4 mana to activate. You're now looking at 3 mana to activate, and it gets bigger. That's really good. And the fact that this guy could ramp you as well. I just really like this. I kind of want to use this with like Ren and Realmbreaker as well, because Ren and Realmbreaker allows us to create creatures, you know, out of our lands, and this makes them bigger. You know, instead of 3/3s, they're 4/4s of hexproof. That's pretty good going as well. So this is actually a pretty good card. I want to try and build some decks around this, but I do feel like it's going to have a home. Alright, next up, number 8, we have the Regal Bunnicorn. So this is a 2-drop, star, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. Now, I wouldn't put this up higher on the list. I mean, it is pretty good. It's just a big vanilla type creature, right? Let's say you play this, you have nothing in play, you play this on turn 2, and you have a 1/1. Yeah, not great. Then let's say next turn you play a wedding announcement, because it's still in the format, it then becomes a 2/2, again, still not great, but then you make it the 1/1, now it's a 3/3. Now in the mid to late game, when the board is a bit, you know, a little bit more cluttered, you've got a little bit more stuff going, this can become a pretty decent creature, but it's just a vanilla creature. We haven't got anything like Trample, or Lifelink, or First Strike, or anything like that. But still, it is just a somewhat big threat. And if you can make a bunch of different food tokens and all this sort of stuff, then this could get bigger. I could see this being in a token-based list. You know, if you're making lots of 1/1s and food tokens and everything like that, then this can get bigger and bigger and bigger, because it's just all non-lands. You know, so if you have an enchantment that makes tokens and stuff like that, then this can get a lot bigger, which I do like. You know, give you an example, even if you just play, the Resolute Reinforcements, you know, you get 2 1/1s, well, this gets +2/+2 from that, you know. That's pretty good as well. So you do have pretty cool ways to buff this, but it's not good enough to go up higher on the list. Next up, we have the End. Not the end of this list, but the End, the removal spell. I actually like this removal spell. So we got 4 mana, 2 colors, 2 black, instant. It costs 2 less to cast if you have 5 or less life. Basically, if you're nearly dead, this is going to be really good. And you get to exile a creature or planeswalker. Then you get to search their graveyard, hand, and library any number of cards of the same name and remove them from the game. And then each copy that they have in their hand, they get to draw a card. This is very strong. So it's basically, I call it like a surgical extraction effect. Basically, you know, you get to rip the whole, you know, all the copies out of your opponent's deck, hand, and graveyards. So this is pretty good, mainly because one, it's an instant. So just on the surface, a 4-mana instant exile, not destroy, exile target creature or planeswalker is already pretty good. Especially for standard, it's already pretty good. Then the addition, they can cost 2 less if you're nearly dying. Great, it's an upside. But then the other upside, this is the main one, is the fact that you get to remove all the copies. Your opponent manages to ramp like crazy and they get out an Atraxa. And you're like, yep, pay for, exile your Atraxa and all other copies of your Atraxas. No more shenanigans. Yeah, you get that value straight away, but I've not got to worry about you playing multiple Atraxas. So that's great. Even if you hit Shieldred, get rid of Shieldred. I don't have to do a Shieldred anymore. Even if you cast it on like a Tenacious Underdog, you know, maybe they got one in there, you know, one in play, maybe they got one in their graveyard, you get rid of any other copies in their deck. This is great. And the thing is, this can also target Planeswalkers. You hit that Wandering Emperor, alright, all the other copies of Wandering Emperor are gone. You ain't got to worry when your opponent has that 4-mana open. You're like, should I attack? Should I not attack? Do I want to attack? When you rip them out of their deck, you know, out of their hand and everywhere else, yeah, it opens it up for you to, you know, get in there and deal some damage. So I actually quite like this. I think this is going to be good. You're going to play a ton of this. You know, we're not going to jam 4 in every deck, because it is 4 mana. 2, maybe 3 copies in a, you know, mono black or black X deck. Very good. Okay, another adventure card coming in now. We have the Decadent Dragon. So this is a 4-drop 4/4. It does have an adventure side. So we've got a 4-mana 4/4. It's got flying trample, so pretty decent stats right there. And whenever it attacks, it creates a treasure token. Already, I think that's pretty good. You know, you get a decent body and it ramps. Now, it's no like, you know, Goldspan Dragon or anything like that, but it's pretty good. And it does have an adventure side for 2 colors, 1 black instant, and you get to exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library face down, and you may look and cast them for as long as they remain exiled. Now, you can't tap any color mana for them, so you ideally want to be doing it against a deck that may be, you know, ideally the same colors as you, whether it's red, black, or any of those sorts. But if you have treasure tokens, you could be making treasure tokens as well, which allows you to be like, you know what, I can now tap them for any mana, you then cast those, you know, cards that I've taken from my opponent. But I think this is pretty good, right? Turn 3, let's say you've got nothing else to do, you do this, you take the 2 cards, and you're like, actually, you know what, this isn't very good, you know, for now, maybe good for later, and then next turn you pay for, bang, you have a 4/4 flyer. It's kind of a must answer threat, because if this thing starts ramping, you know, it starts making treasure tokens for you, you know, you start getting benefit of the cards you exile, you start ramping into your other threats. This is a pretty good card, and yeah, I think it will see play, you know, and Rakdos has been doing good for a while, so this could see a potential home. Then we have Talion, the Kindly Lord. This is a good legendary creature. I think it's going to be really tough to play around this one and play with. You know, 4 mana for a 3/4 flyer is pretty decent in these colors. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, they lose 2 life and you get to draw cards. This is actually pretty good. You're going to have to know what the metagame is, right? You're going to have to know what are the cards that your opponent's going to be playing. You know, so this really rewards someone that kind of knows what's going on. But this can also punish somebody if you're playing against a deck you don't really recognize. They're playing a, you know, homebrew rogue deck. You're like, what on earth is my opponent playing? I don't know what number to name. I think the most common number in standard that you probably would want to name is probably 2, I would say. 2's pretty good because there's some decent removal in the format, go for the throat, things like that, that can deal with him. And then probably 4. Like 4 to me seems like a pretty decent number as well. You have a lot of 2 power or 2 toughness creatures. You have a lot of 4 power, 4 toughness creatures in the format. So I do think this actually, those 2 numbers could hit a few stuff. Because this is coming on turn 4, right? This is coming down turn 4. If you're playing against a black deck and you're thinking, right, my opponent's either going to have a go for a throat, they're going to have maybe a copy of the end. You know, you're sitting there thinking, right, okay, this is what they're going to be using. At least you get some advantage from that. You know, you get a nice little 2-for-1. So you got to, you know, it rewards you for knowing the metagame in the decks, but you got to be good. But I do think this will find a home. Already blue-black's doing really well, so yeah, this will be pretty good. Then we have Beseech the Mirror. Now, this is a card I've been talking about earlier when we talked about that card that produces the food token. This is a 4-drop, 1 colorless, triple black, so it requires a decent amount of mana. You know, ideally probably mono black, but it does have the bargain mechanic, which is you may sacrifice an artifact and charm or a token as you cast a spell, so you get an additional effect. Okay, so it is a sorcery. Search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle your library. If it was bargains, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost if it costs 4 or less. Otherwise, you put that card into your hand. So we have a ton of different stuff. It doesn't have to be a black card, okay? Even though this is triple black, it doesn't have to be a black card. Most of the time, it probably will. You know, most of the time, you're going to be maybe sacrifice food or token or creature or whatever, and you go and get a Shield Druid, or you go and get Talion, or you go and get something else that costs 4 or less that you really need. Let's say they got something in their graveyard, and you're like, man, I really need to exile that. Graveyard Trespasser. Doesn't have to be 4, could be 4 or less. So you can get a really good amount of value from this, and I do like that, you know. So it works very well. You make that food token for 1 mana. Pretty sweet going. Really good cards, actually. I don't know if you're going to be playing anything that is, say 3 colors. 2 colors you could probably get away with if it's more predominantly black and you're splashing maybe blue or red or something like that, or green. But I do feel like this is more likely going to be maybe in a mono black style list. Very strong though in mono black. I think this is going to be a very, very nice card because there's some really good creatures. You know, we've seen some good creatures. Could we see this in a you know, blue-black Dimir mid-range? Yeah, I think so. This would be a pretty nice one. Wouldn't have too many copies because it is triple black and it is 4 mana and it's a sorcery. But it's a tutor. It's a tutor for any creature as long as you've got something to sacrifice. Very, very strong indeed. Okay, right. Coming to the top 3 now. We have the Sleep Cursed Faerie. There is a 1-drop 3/3. Okay, which on the surface you're thinking, what? It has fly and ward 2. You're thinking, what? For 1 mana? However, it does come into play with 3 stun counters. So basically, if you go into untap it, you remove a stun counter. You gotta wait until this comes online to be able to block an attack, but you can pay 2 mana to untap it. Now, when I previewed this card, I thought to myself, oh, to begin with, my initial thoughts was it wasn't that great. Oh, you know, you have to wait. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute, they can't go for the throw it. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, they can't cut down it because it isn't, you know, it's too big. It's 3/3. Okay. It's got ward 2, so your opponent's going to have to pay 4 mana to go for the throw it, which just feels bad in my opinion, or 4 mana for a lightning strike, you know, if you're playing against a red deck. But let's say you play this on turn 1, okay, and then on turn 2, you haven't really got anything to play, you're like, okay, well, you untap, remove 1 counter, then you turn 2, you pay 2 mana, you untap again, remove another counter, then on turn 3, it goes to untap, and that's all of its counters gone, okay, and on that turn 3, if you really wanted to, you could play whatever you want, or you can maybe hold some, you know, removal or some counter magic up or whatever, and if not, you can just untap it so it can block. It's really tough to, you know, remove. Mid to late game though, this is a pretty rough card. You know, I wouldn't say it's great. I mean, if it's late game, you're gonna draw it and you're gonna sink all your mana into untapping it. But again, you really want to be sinking all your mana to untap it? I don't really think so. I think this is going to see play in a bunch of different decks. I could see it seeing play maybe in the Dimir mid-range list. Mono Blue Tempo is going to absolutely love this card because you can play it. You know, you can hold up your counter magic. If your opponent doesn't do anything that you really care about, you can just untap. This is actually a really, really nice one. And if fairies become a decent tribe, you know, within the standard format, this will find a home. So I think this is going to be a pretty good one. I'm excited to see if it's going to see play. I can already picture myself, you know, be like, oh, I can't remove this card because of the ward 2. You know, it's going to feel pretty bad. Or I'm like, got like 2 copies of cut down on my hand, and I'm like, I can't get rid of this. I could see it happening. So I do feel like this is going to be a good one. Missing out on number 1, we have the creature lands. So I feel like all of the creature lands are pretty decent. We have the red-white one. So they all come into play tapped. They're all enemy colored dual lands, which is pretty cool to have. This one for 3 mana becomes a 2/2. Great in and of itself. But then when it attacks, you get to put +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. It doesn't have to be itself. Could just be another creature. This is quite nice to have in an aggressive style deck, and I do rate this one. I think they're all good. There's some which I'll get to, which I think are better, but this one is still pretty decent. Then we have the Restless Cottage, which is the green-black one. It costs 4 mana to activate. It becomes a 4/4, and then when it attacks, you get to exile. Whenever it attacks, you get to create a food token, and you get to exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. So it's a big threat, right? 4 mana for a 4/4 body is already pretty good. Then you get to interact with your opponent's graveyard, which is even better. And you get to make a food token, which we already know is relevant or going to be relevant in this format and in this standard format. I've already talked about the turtle. You know, if you play this in the same deck, you're now paying 3 mana to activate this. and it becomes a 5/5. There's things to think about, right? It's things to think about, but I do like this one. Then we have the Restless Fortress. I think this was the first one shown. This is the white-black one. You have 4 mana for a 1/4 body, so more defensive, but when it attacks, you drain your opponent for 2. I mean, this isn't the most powerful one. I kind of feel this is like a mid-range one. This is like middle of the road. This is pretty good, you know, being able to drain your opponent. 1/4 bodies more on the defensive side. This is pretty good against aggro style lists as well. So I do like it. I kind of feel like this card would be amazing if the drain life ability was if it attacks or blocks. How cool would that be? You know, you could be a really defensive version because it's a 1/4. I think that would be pretty sweet. But it is when it attacks, it will see play, but it's more or less kind of like middle of the road. Then we have the Restless Spire, which is the blue-red one. This is the cheapest one to activate. 2 mana to activate it for a 2/1 with first strike as long as it's your turn. So it's more on the aggressive style, and then whenever it attacks, you get to scry 1. I think this one will see a good amount of play, right? You know, you could play this in a kind of burn list as a cheap aggressive land that gets in there, deals damage. We've already seen in the past when we have very cheap to activate creature lands, whether or not it be a Mishra's Foundry or back in the day a Mutavault, we've seen it. And this gets to scry, and it has first strike, so it makes it even more awkward to block, especially in the early game. Gets you some good little card advantage going. I rate this one. And then finally we have the Restless Vinestalk. I think this one and the Cottage are the best ones. This is 5 mana to activate, blue-green, okay. A lot of mana, right? It's the most expensive one out of all of them, but it is a 5/5 creature with trample, so it's a big body, big body. Then when it attacks, you get to make another creature's power and toughness 3/3 the end of turn. So you have a big body, 5/5 body with trample, very relevant, and you can turn some, I don't know, little token or something like that, creature, whatever, into a 3/3. You know, that's also pretty good. So you're basically attacking with 8 power, 5 of which is trample. We already talked about the turtle with the other one. Imagine the turtle with this, right? You're now paying 4 to activate this. This is coming in as a 6/6 trampler. Huge for 4 mana. Huge. So yeah, I do like this. So maybe, you know, I can build some decks with this in. But I think this one and the Cottage are my 2 favourite out of the creature lands. And coming number 1, we have the Mosswood Dreadknight. Now, I really like this card. When I first saw it, I read it and I thought, wow, this is Value Town. This is a really good card. I already like green-black as a colour combination. I love Jund, so I will play this. This is a 2 mana 3/2 with trample. Pretty decent stats in of itself. Then when it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure card until your next turn, right? Until the end of your next turn. So pretty good. You've got a good amount of time to do it. And its adventure cost is basically 2 mana sorcery, draw a card, lose a life. Yeah, we're not talking about something stupidly crazy, but it's just good value. You know, this guy is just an absolute pain to deal with. You're going to get a ton of value, you know, from this. This is a really good, grindy, mid-range card, and I love it. I'm all here for it. I love cards like this. I really, really do. And, you know, we've already seen in the previous Eldraine with Thrones of Eldraine, when you have a good value adventure card, it tends to be a little bit on the broken side. We saw it with like Bone Crusher Giant and stuff like that. So I think this could be one that we could see playing a big role in Standard. You know, it's been a while since we've seen green-black. We've always seen like Rakdos, or we've seen Grixis, or we've seen blue-black. But it's nice to see green-black, and hopefully it will find a home. I'm going to give it a try. Maybe we can have some weird, you know, Dread Knight turtle deck coming in the future. So that'll be quite fun to play. But there you have it, guys. Those are my picks for my top 10 cards from Wilds of Eldraine for Standard. There are some pretty decent cards. I think the creature lands are just going to show up everywhere just because lands are great and creature lands are even better. And I think Standard needs some help. You know, it has been a bit stale. Obviously, we've been waiting for Wilds of Eldraine to come out. I haven't been playing much Standard. I've been playing some other formats as well. Mainly at the moment, I've been playing a lot of Commander, like just in person. But, you know, I'm looking at playing, obviously, Wilds of Eldraine when it comes out. But let me know down in the comments, guys, what are your favourite cards, or what cards that you're looking forward to playing in the new Wilds of Eldraine Standard. That is my top 10 list. I want to know what yours are as well. And, of course, we're going to be playing a ton of Standard when the set drops. We're going to be brewing up some decks and trying to climb ladder. We'll try and hit Mythic this season with, of course, the new cards, and I'm looking forward to it. So definitely make sure you're subscribed for all the Standard deck techs, and of course I'll be covering other formats as well, like Explorer, Historic, and even Commander. So we're going to be going through a bunch of different formats as well. But make sure you hit that subscribe button for all of that magic content. But that is it from me in this video, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.